All right, time to get into the next GLOAT podcast of Mr. GLOAT Podcast, ladies and gentlemen. It's time to kick things up with UFC 3, The American Dream, 1994, September the 9th, live in the Grady Cole Center in Charlotte, North Carolina. With 90,000 pay-per-view buys and 3,000 attendants watching this show, the competition is getting tougher and tougher by the minute, and everything else with our two-time defending champion, Royce Gracie, has coming back after taking the break of winning $60,000 after he won last March, taking on 4 fights in a 16-man tournament. But we come back 6 months later, they're bringing back the 8-man tournament. It's amazing. We have returning member Ken Shamrock, the shoe fighter. He's back in competition. But we also have a few other fighters, such as Keith Hackney, Kempo fighter. He's actually a 4th degree Kempo karate, 2nd degree in Tang Soo Do, and 2nd degree in Taekwondo in his history. He does weigh in an average of 200 pounds, but man, don't trust him because he is a fighter. But we also have another competitor coming down, weighing at 600 pounds, the late Emmanuel Yarborough. And man, oh man, what do we have to say about the brown belt judo fighter? Guys, there's a lot of interesting information and funny things I like to talk about this guy in his MMA career, and it's not that much to talk about. So I hope I'll talk about his career the same way I talked about Gerard Gorget, or even how I talked about our one-handed glove boxer, Royce Gracie's debut opponent, Art Jimerson, and how his career went down the hill. Or same with Tylee Tui, also the first MMA fighter to be in UFC as a sumo wrestler. Well, they brung back another one, and it's 600 pounds of wild beef. This monster, he might not have much to talk about, but he has an interesting history to talk about when it comes to UFC and his other MMA fights in the future. So let's get to that some other time. But we also have other fighters, such as judo fighter Christopher Leininger, a 4th degree black belt in judo. He's been hitting himself at around under 189 pounds at 6 foot tall from Scottsdale, Arizona. Hey, let's see if he has a chance to start his career off. We also have Rowan Payne, a Muay Thai fighter. But we do have a couple scary opponents to talk about. Kimo Leopoldo and Harold Howard. Wonder what we have to say about them. Do we have anything to say about those guys? I don't think so. And just to make this clear, I don't want my eyes being flashed by the sun. This moment right here in history, ladies and gentlemen, is the best. And it's crazy. So they cut back to competition like last year. They talk about mostly how everything started out from start to finish. They tell us what happened 6 months ago, and so Royce Gracie comes out. He wins, and wins. He's a 7-0 fighter. And they also cut, before the show starts, they give us a little bit of a warning thing, such as all fighters in this program are highly trained athletes who know the limits of their endurance. So there are no rules, no strict medical supervision, no fighters in seriously hurt. Do not attempt this at home. This is 1994, so who knows who was going to get into this stuff. It's not like how many times people thought professional wrestling was real. So yeah, there might have been a lot of blood and guts back then. But here's the thing we do have for a rule. So John McCarthy is the referee. He's back in competition, but here's something we do have for a rule. So $60,000, there's only 8 fighters in this tournament, 6 newcomers, and we also have a couple others that are doing a preliminary fight, not in a tournament, or so we'll thought. We'll get to that moment later. Also, we still have the rule, we have submission, cornerman could throw in the towel by knockout, but this is also the first time in history that the event has marked the first time in history that a referee was given the authority to stop a contest. We don't know why they thought that was an idea that they should have came up in UFC 1, and we don't even know how no one died in UFC 2. Jesus, you saw how much horrible injuries there were in those first UFC fights? It's like, yeah, crazy. Also, we also have returning commentator Brian Kilmore, even though some people named him Kilmore, but yeah, he's back in commentary. He's back doing this. But we also have our NFL friend of ours is back from NFL Hall of Famer, Jim. It's great to see him back. And guess what? They're standing up, talking right now. They're not even sitting down, starting the show. They're just standing up. And guys, I would like to talk about some of the information and their commentary, talking about so much of this and so much of that. But if I had to, this would take a long time. And it is crazy. They also have Ben Perry. He's also back in commentary. Amazing enough already. And also, they tell us this or that. Like it says, the laws of the Octagon, there's no rounds, no time limit, no way out. But they will give us a timer as it is. Because in UFC 2, they didn't give us they didn't give timers. So I don't know how to explain it. It's kind of weird that they even talk. Like they show us the screen of the laws of the Octagon. And then they cut back to the commentators talking. And then when Ben Perry was done talking, they show us the screen again. And then they show the commentators talking again. And then they show us the screen again. I'm like, dude, what the frig? We already saw this several times. How many times are you going to show us it again? Like, we have a third grade education. I think a lot of kids can read that quickly before oh my gosh, it's so ridiculous. And you know what's even ridiculous? I have to go to the bathroom. So be back in a minute. I have to use the bathroom. Sorry. Sorry. Anyway, so like I said before, so we cut to the Park Hotel where they announce fighters of open style martial arts tournaments. So they give us so here's the thing. They show us a martial arts tournament. They show us a press conference. It's a video package, almost like a promo, with a guy with a deep voice telling us this or that. And at this time, they tell us that 24 different fighters have been training in different styles and such, battling in no rules, blah, blah. You can just listen to it yourself. It's pretty interesting. And it's kind of interesting that they show us these ideas, even though we're only 1 year into this MMA thing in USA. Because, guys, USA, guys, people think that archives in UFC are really easy to find because it's only been around for now only 30 years, since 1994 to now the present. Because we never had a lot of MMA. We've only barely started a quarter of a century. But back in the old days, during boxing, during Jack Johnson's domination back in the day, back in those days, archives today are so hard. Like, you people can go somewhere like go to Nevada or go to Mexico, and you'll go to a warehouse where maybe Indiana Jones has been, and you can find an archive fight of Don King actually pulling out a gun, killing a person in 1954 for going to one of King's gambling houses. You can go to even see footage of Wilt Chamberlain's 100-point game. That archive footage that hasn't been shown, because boxing is hard to find for archive. People think oh wait, hey, where's that fight of BJ Flores versus Trevor Bryan in 2018 for the WBA interim title? It wasn't televised? What's going on in this world today? It's 2018 right now. We're not back in the old days where this footage has been lost in time and it's in a warehouse right now. And on the other side, we have a huge anaconda box that's 20 feet by 20 feet big. Oh, it's a big python. Oh, he doesn't want you to take none of the boxing footage. It's not like how hard it is. You can find WWE archive footage on WWE.com and find footage of a WCW footage of Bash the Beach 2000 or something like that. So, to be honest, it's not that hard to find archive footage. But if you people look up archive footage of the Gracie family back in the days, or the time when we had some footage of Royce Gracie's other relative that's undefeated 12-0 with all by knockout submissions in his career. But they do count a couple of his fights against a same opponent in 1980 to 84. If you guys haven't heard information of the Gracie family, it's really confusing. It's really confusing. Yeah. So, I really don't know what to say about that. Anyway, guys, it's only been like 10 minutes since I started, so let's just get down to the fights and just get to it. Oh, correct. Oh, so Brian Kilmore, he comes out, tells us that we know who Ken Shamrock and who Gracie is, but who are the other fighters? And how they fell out in competition, telling us by a draw who will fight who and when. So the first fight will be, well, obviously this is a mismatch fight or a stupid fight. So our first fight today is Keith Hackney and Emmanuel Yarborough. Emmanuel Yarborough is now the heaviest guy in history as a sumo wrestler / judo. And what's even interesting, Keith Hackney, considering it does say that he's a Kempo fighter, people also call him a Kung Fu fighter. So they tell us that it's going to be techniques against size, but I'm sure Emmanuel Yarborough already knew what happened against Taiwi Tui last year ago, so he doesn't want to make that same mistake. So it's going to be an interesting fight. By the way, guys, what makes this moment interesting is that, so guys, the first 2 UFC events happened once in the winter of 1993, around Thanksgiving, another one in March. They both happened in Colorado. Well, the second fight happened some other building. The first one happened in the Nicholas Sports Arena, where the Denver Nuggets are and such, basketball team. That was the first event that was held as a UFC. So the first 2 shows happened in Colorado. Now we move to North Carolina inside the Grady Cole Center, which is a small civic center with no more than 3,000 seats. You can only fit 3,000 seats. Like this place was built since 1954, and you think for once someone's gonna held a huge major promotion in a building that small? Oh, don't get me wrong. This is during the time when they were starting to build things up. Hell, it's like 1960s when Martin Luther King Jr. spoke at the Park Center after an invitational in the local NAACP chapter when he was invited to speak in 1958, when he was suffered by a stabbing in New York that canceled his visit, which took place during that same venue in North Carolina. And guess what? They even had moments such as Cheap Trick when they actually performed there in 78. And most importantly, technically they had other people such as Frank Zappa, Black Sabbath, James Gang, Pink Floyd, David Bowie, you name it. People were performing in that building in the 1970s. Hell, even Ozzy Osbourne performed there in 1991. God almighty. And of course, it's crazy. And as of August the 5th, 1994, they had like Marilyn Manson and Counting Crows and such performing around the time when they were building this UFC event up for UFC 3. Dude, this building was so small, it was only built for a club. But man, oh man, when I saw the 3,000 attendants that were there that night watching this was like watching an ECW show. Because ECW are extreme fans that go extreme for the people that put pain. And this venue and the crowd reaction and the crowds cheering crazy, this was like a real ECW show that no one ever saw, even before when ECW changed its names from Eastern Championship Wrestling to Extreme. Like in 1992 was when they made ECW, but when was it started? Like 1992, they called it Eastern Championship Wrestling. Yes, that was what they called it. But when did they branded the company to Extreme? Let me look this up. 1989. Yep. That's Eastern Championship Wrestling. Yep, back 92. Gilbert Center. Blah, 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 blah. Yep, Paul Heyman. Hardcore terms, influential. Heyman's creative influential throughout 1993 and ran. They had terms for hardcore, but when did they change the name of it to 1994, around the same time. Blah, blah, blah. I don't know what month they changed it, but it was 1994 when they changed the letters to ECW. I'm still... Well, anyway, I can't find when they changed the names, but still, it's that's what this whole show reminded me of. It's crazy. It's crazy. Guys, I don't know what to say. I don't know what to say. So guys, here's the information we got with everyone coming. Like I said before, John McCarthy is the entire referee. He's going to referee every single fight in the show. Guys, I love that they show us a promo package of Emmanuel Yarborough. Like, this guy, 600 pounds, 6'8". And I love that they're showing a footage of him just smacking a punching bag with his hand. Like, he's just slapping it. And they also said that he also plays second in the World Sumo Championship. But in real life, Emmanuel Yarborough was originally a fighter that was involved in multiple NCAA things. Like, for instance, he achieved the NCAA All-American Division II in 1983 to 1985. In the university, later ascended to Division I in 86, while he played football in Division I athlete in 82 and 83 after college, and he trained as a judo fighter at the time. But yes, so he really had a lot of interesting things. It is crazy. Also, he's also a big crowd favorite. The crowd is cheering on this big dude, but people know that he might not win. Keith Hackney, I don't think he's that much of a great fighter, but he does have a lot of better skills of moving around, but you have to be careful because he's 36 years old. Emmanuel is 29. Age difference, the height, the weight, the age, it depends. It depends. They also said that Keith is 200 pounds as well. So this fight starts out, they both, like I said before, guys, the announcer, I don't have to say the announcer's name. Everyone loves this announcer. I kind of like this announcer. He's pretty fun. He announces both of the names. And like I said before in UFC 1, where they had, when the announcer announces the fighters, the two of them walk up to each other. The referee tells them, have a good, clean fight, this or that, and then they walk out of the ring. That happens in UFC 1, but in UFC 2 and UFC 3, after the announcer announces their names and he walks out of the ring, the referee just lets the fighters stay in their corner, don't walk to each other. He tells them to start the fight, and they start the fight. So just if you viewers don't know what I'm talking about, just watch the footage for yourself and you'll understand what I'm talking about. So this fight starts out, they both handle each other, and Emmanuel is starting out just trying to go forward, scaring Keith. Keith does throw a little bit of a left kick to his knee. And it's pretty interesting for what he did, because as it seemed like that Keith was going to scare off Emmanuel, as he did, he turns out his body and swings out with this wild right straight into any part of Emmanuel's noggin. He threw this so hard right that I don't think Emmanuel was expecting him to even throw a punch that early in the fight. And he drops him to the ground. The crowd is going nuts. He gets up. Well, he gets up on all fours barely. Keith is punching him, throwing him, and then suddenly his right leg gets grabbed, and now Emmanuel's on top of him. He's throwing out punches. He even rips Keith's shirt off. Part of his first lace on his shirt is ripped off, so he has part of this on, getting dirtied up. And he's throwing out punches, and as Emmanuel gets up, he throws him to the cage door, and the door opens, and my God, and Keith is walking. He walks down the step. I thought he was going to fall. Dude, And the crowd is going nuts. The crowd is going nuts. 3,000 attendants in a small civic center are going ECW. It's so crazy. And Keith, with this suit, almost looking like he just came out of George of the Jungle, because he has his first strap of his shirt is broken, but the other is still attached to him. He walks back into the ring. He's just jogging forward to the other side of the ring, just taking it easy. The referee lets him know, and they start the fight. Like, this is a crazy way to start off a show. Like, this was like an opener. So Keith throws another heavy right that kind of scares him, throws another left kick. Emmanuel, at this moment, has to understand that he had his one opportunity of finishing the fight, and now they took it so calm. At this moment, Emmanuel does get kicked once in the noggin, and then he tries to grab him, but Keith dodges away. And then the fight ends as Keith throws a left. I wouldn't say he was trying to kick him in the groin, but as he tried to, Emmanuel grabs his left leg, and he's just throwing out punches. He's bamming punches at him, drops Emmanuel to the ground, punch. And, of course, around the 2-minute mark, he tries to get back up. Emmanuel's trying to get back up. And, of course, his other sleeve on his shirt's now broken. And now it's torn off, so now he can see his full body. And just as we get to the 2-minute mark of the fight, which we were about to get to the 2 minute of the fight, he's now throwing an elbow at him. And as he does, the referee stops the fight at 1 minute and 59 seconds because Emmanuel tapped out. But the fight ended in punches by TKO. I will say, though, this fight was pretty good. I actually liked this fight from start to finish. It was a good opener for a fight. Emmanuel does have a little bit of blood here or there. They both shake hands, and he moves on to the semifinals. Or so we thought. We'll get to that in a bit. Keith Hackney was a really calm fighter, I will say that, but I don't think Keith Hackney had a lot of problems in that fight. Him exposing his leg just so Emmanuel could grab his leg because he took him down before he threw him to the cage door. But, guys, that moment, guys, I actually like the moment when they showed us the instant replay of him hitting the canvas for the first time. It showed that replay where Keith actually had his hands angled like this, and he's holding it this high, and it just shows part of it hitting Emmanuel a little bit. It's like the hand, and it's like, dude, like part of your, like, can you imagine just hitting someone that hard and just, like, you were just slapping the guy and he just hit the ground? Like seeing the replay of that first heavy punch on Emmanuel and him taking the ground, that had to be one of the craziest punches. They showed us another replay of him just slapping that guy in another replay perspective. It was crazy. Like, it was crazy. So, of course, Ben Perry interviews Emmanuel, and then he tells him, were you expecting anything to happen or something, this or that, blah, blah, blah? And he replies, no, not in the least bit. I thought about the offense, and that's what put it together. Because I've had a flush before, this or that. And it was crazy, like, it really was. So Ben tells him, you were standing there, you taking it, you kept taking it, and it was almost like you couldn't get up. And his strategy was to take some of the abuse. But you can only go so far. Like, technically, at the end of the day, is that a good strategy? As a sumo fighter, who knows? But yeah, it was great. It was a good hard. It was a great fight. I will say, though, Keith Hackney defeated Goliath. So it was a great moment, and it was good. So, guys, the second fight, Ken Shamrock versus Christopher Leininger. Guys, Ken Shamrock enters the ring with an interesting red robe with shoes. Guys, I don't know why the rules of UFC says it's okay to wear shoes, but you're not allowed to kick. It just makes you wonder. Guys, I'm just wondering, can someone tell me in the comments when's the last time that a UFC fighter has ever worn shoes when they allowed saying that you're not supposed to wear shoes anymore in UFC? Let me know in the comments. It was ridiculous seeing Ken Shamrock wearing shoes. Crazy. Christopher, he enters the ring wearing a ridiculous blue outfit, but you know what? He wasn't playing ridiculous with it. He came in there to fight. And you know what? I gotta give props to Christopher for fighting this fight, considering how long this fight went. Seriously, this fight almost went 5 minutes. Now, I'm not going to get into all the details of the fights, but like, this fight started off so wild. Now, the fight starts off, they both announce the fighters, and at this moment, Christopher is going counterclockwise around the ring, while Ken is staying in the middle of the ring. So they're waiting for their big shot to go for the hit. So Ken Shamrock is leading with his left foot, as he's just angling, while Christopher is starting off with his right foot sometimes. And sometimes, mostly, that strategy might not work a little bit. It's like, oh, he's going this way and leading off, trying to pick up his right foot to scare off Ken Shamrock, and Ken Shamrock is leading off with his left foot. It's an interesting strategy when you say he's a southpaw and he's an orthodox, but with a shoe fighter and a judo fighter, it's a pretty interesting strategy. It really is. That's what I liked about this fight. And then they start throwing a couple of slaps at each other. They back up, and Christopher goes for an attack, but fails, and Ken puts him down to the ground. He holds him on. He grabs him forward, and then Christopher does manage to wrap him around on top. They're grabbing onto each other, and for the next minute or two, they're just like he's on top of him for a while. He is trying to throw some interesting punches to his head. Christopher is on top about. He's trying to hurt Ken Shamrock as best he can, and because at this moment for the next 2 minutes, he's just holding himself. Like, Christopher's doing a good job keeping his legs wrapped around on the body of Ken Shamrock. So he's doing a good job making sure that he won't escape, but make sure that he doesn't, like for anything else, we just want to make sure that he doesn't make that mistake. And at this moment, I did thought I actually saw a headbutt at one point, but I don't know. I gotta look back. And then Ken tries to go for the attack again. We go for a grab. We go for this. I wouldn't say it was an entertaining fight, but the thing is, I think when you look at it, like the commentator was right. This is like a chess game, because guys, don't get me wrong. When you have one guy on top and one guy on the bottom, on top of each other, and the other's on the bottom, yeah, it is like a chess game. And it really does look like that they're both in the ground for a long time. And it might not be entertaining, but yet again, you got to wait for the opportunity. And then Christopher does try to throw some right punches and left punches. And then suddenly the fight goes on where he loses his legs, he gets wrapped, and then suddenly Ken Shamrock finally tries to get back up, and Christopher now has his legs around his neck or something, part of his right arm, and then boom, he gets out of it, Ken, and then boom, he gets on, he picks him up, then he puts him on the ground. Now he's on flat as a belly. Now he's actually doggy-styling him away. Now he's on top again. He's on the cage floor. We're now at the 3-minute mark at this moment, and now he's on a cage, and now we are getting a real fight here. Like, it's a really interesting fight that he's putting him close to the cage, but, like, guys, I wouldn't say this fight was all entertaining, but saying that Zane Frazier, versus Kevin Rozier and UFC 1. That fight went 4 minutes and 20 seconds, but that fight was a little bit more entertaining than this. And then suddenly, Christophe finally gets his back turned with his back on the ground, and Ken is now throwing punches on him, at cage door. And then he tries to lap his legs around Ken again, but he's getting stuck on the cage and everything. And it's a pretty entertaining fight because you get to see what this guy was doing. Like, he was in that fight for a good amount of time against Ken Shamrock, a little bit longer than how Ken Shamrock was in the first other two fights. And then the fight ends at the 4-minute 30-second mark. He finally tried to go for a grabbing move at this moment, because at this moment, like, you don't want to be in the fight that long, but you have to end it sooner than later. So Ken, before the 5-minute mark, he's still on top of him, and then he throws this right punch, and at this moment, like what are you gonna do? Stay there for another 5 minutes? Who knows? But at the end of the day, he watches it, and as Ken was about to throw that right punch, Christophe taps out, and he just throws another punch, not realizing, because Christophe was tapping on the ground way behind underneath of Ken's legs, so he couldn't see him as he threw that right punch. And the referee stops the fight, and that was it. I will say, though, guys, Christophe did an okay job. I will say, though, Christophe did an okay job being in that fight for as long as way he is. I will give him credit for that. But Ken Shamrock, in my opinion, had a lot more better work of in that fight, and he managed to hold himself. But you viewers do get to think to yourself, who's going to make the mistake? And that's what made the fight interesting. I don't have a lot to say about this fight. The replay and everything else, it was decent. It was an okay fight. So the third fight of this competition is a Thai fighter, Muay Thai fighter, Rowan Payne versus Harold Howard. Do I have anything to say about this fight? Well, all we know is that the only thing we know about Rowan Payne is he's the native son of Charlotte, North Carolina. So he's the hometown crowd. Harold Howard, he's the first Canadian to be in the UFC show. This is the first Canadian fighter. Like Rowan Payne, I will say, though, he does have an interesting body, but the way his body and the way he was built almost looked like he deserved to be in a WWE show of being part of a big man. Like, his body and his physique should have made him a WWE fighter. Like, he didn't deserve to almost be like a UFC fighter or even MMA. But yet again, who am I to judge? This is 1994. So I don't know much about that. But Harold Howard, dude, I love the promo package they show of Harold Howard. Now, Harold Howard, he's in his mid-30s at this point, just like Keith Hackney and other fighters that might be past their prime. Because Keith Hackney is so he's a 2-degree black belt in Goju Ryo Karate and also Chito Ryo Karate, 2-degree. He's a 3rd-degree black belt in Kitsune Ryo Jiu-Jitsu, which is my favorite division, and a 6-time Katsudo Taijutsu. So he's not that much to say. He's a really dangerous person, but he's almost past his prime. But he has become a dangerous fighter. Like he holds a lot of great divisions in his career. I love the package promo that they show us of him throwing punches. And I love that they show us part of a footage of him and a guy holding onto a sandbag, and he goes for a punch, and he goes for a kick. And then he throws other multiple punches, and we have sand and dirt coming out of the bag. Like, by golly, when he shows us the footage of how heavy he hits those punches in the sand coming out of the bags, guys, the way his look and his physique and his beard, his mustache, I almost really thought that Harold Howard, a guy from Niagara Falls, Ontario, Canada, was a real-life serial killer. Due to his facial and his beard and his mustache and his hair, he really looked like a real-life serial killer and a really dangerous man in real life. He really did look like it. He really did. And he came into that fight with amazing, dangerous skills. He really seemed like a dangerous fighter to win this competition. Now, Rowan Payne is 30 years old, but he's 5'9", 205 pounds. Not good. 230 pounds, 6'2", a 36-year-old guy from Canada. This seemed like an easy win for Harold. That's what I thought when watching this. Rowan Payne was a short fighter. He might have earned a little bit of success, but Harold Howard might have been older than him, but he had more dangerous skills of being in that ring. And he starts that fight out with throwing left, and then he threw to right, the Canadian guy, Harold. And then Rowan puts down the Canadian, and then they flip him over. He flips him over. He gets back up. Well, Harold gets back up, flips him over, and then he kicks him, only for Rowan to drop him again. Like, that was a crazy recovery. That was crazy. And he's trying to get on top of him, but then, boom, Harold gets up, comes out, and he just throws these unbelievable, like, craziness. It was crazy. He elbows him, and then he tries to get back up again, and Rowan just drops him down again. And Harold flips him over past the... He dropped down Harold Howard 3 times in takedowns in 30 seconds. But it wasn't good enough. He gets back up. They both get back up. Rowan throws a right kick, and then he throws another kick again, and then Harold finally puts a mark. He finally throws a good punch here or there, and then the fight ends where he throws this amazing combination and brings down Rowan Payne, and then Harold doesn't hesitate to go down to the ground and just slam another right, and the referee knows that, so he stops the fight as soon as it gets worse at 46 seconds. 46 seconds. God almighty. That right there is a fighter. Like, I don't know how he's recovered from getting taken down 3 times, but that was a pretty dang good fight. I really enjoyed that fight. Harold Howard had all of the amazing skills. For reasons how he recovered from that was crazy. And Rowan Payne, considering he was 5'9", 205 pounds, which is weird for being a heavyweight at that with his physique and his build, he did an interesting job, but it wasn't a good strategy. So the fourth fight today, guys, the final fight of the quarterfinals is, of course, Royce Gracie, because for some reason they did say that they picked all the fighters in the hat and put them in a tournament. But of course, Royce Gracie has to be last again. Well, to be honest, Royce Gracie was the third guy that was picked in... No, wait a minute. I forgot. No, wait. The third fight in UFC 1 was the third fight with Art Jimerson and Royce Gracie. And, yeah, Ken Shamrock and Patrick Smith was the final fight in the quarterfinals. So, yeah. Okay, so not all fights were last. But for reasons why Royce Gracie was the final fighter in this quarterfinals, we'll never know. Now, guys... Kimo Lepardo, or Leopoldo, like, this guy, okay, Kimo Lepardo, guys, is 26 years old. He's the youngest man in the ring. And so, guys, the history goes is that Kimo Lepardo had moments in his career. He was a man that started out in California, where he sought to renew his career in football, going under the name of Kim Leopold. But he quickly became an NJCAA All-American and gained interest from many divisions in Division I colleges. But he tore his ACLs, and his success only lasted until the middle of sophomore year. And depressed, and with seemingly no future in his life. He met a guy named Joe Smith, and that guy would later turn him into a mixed martial arts fighter. And some time after that, they started studying footage for UFC 1 of Royce Gracie. And at this moment, they were training so much to give this guy a chance. And even though Kimo was a young guy, 6'3", he did have a dangerous look in him. But keep this in mind, guys. Kimo Leopoldo was born in Munich, West Germany. He was a resident in Hawaii, but now in Los Angeles, California, as of today. So he starts his debut out in 1994. This guy is starting at a young age, starting in MMA at 26. And they show us a promo package of his workout abilities. And 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 then we later realize for the next 6 months he's now preaching to gospel. He has a tattoo of a cross of Jesus Christ in a cross with a statue on his back of Jesus Christ with a cross, a huge cross. It lasts right down here from the top down to the bottom base part of his back. That's how big the tattoo was. He has. I don't know what to say. And you don't want to know what's crazy? They enter the ring. Now, guys, I just want viewers to know this venue might be really small, but it was big enough to have an entrance for fighters to enter outside of the ring. But this was ridiculous. So the first thing they show us after the promo package is done, they show us, they now cut back live where it shows a guy holding a sign saying, Jesus said, if anyone would come after me, he must deny himself and take up his cross and follow me. Matthew, chapter 16. And as that guy walks out, the camera now goes forward and sees this big, huge cross. There's a bunch of people that are trying to put the cross down, and we later realize that Chemo is holding on to a big, large cross. My God, this 26-year-old guy. And it's so funny because he enters the ring, but guys, just so that you viewers know, just to let you know how big the entrance is for each fighter walking out to the ring, because guys, the venue's not that big, and there's also seats and people in attendance that are sitting this big and wide. Like if you had to say from here is how wide it is. There's seats that are this way and seats right here this big. So it's really hard for some guy to walk up with a statue or a huge big cross, him holding the cross, and there's fans that are on the seat, like I'm sitting right here, and the opening area where fighters get to enter the ring, I have to sit down to wait for the cross to go over my head before I stand back up. That's how big the cross was. If you viewers just watch the footage, you'll understand what I'm talking about, because it's a big friggin' cross. What the frig? It's crazy, and they have security and people letting fans know to duck down or sit down and wait for this huge big cross to go by. If this is an entertainment of extreme, guys, if this is not how ECW came to be, I don't know what. And then suddenly the camera cuts to a distance high in the rafters that shows the word Jesus loves you with the sign of the cross, which is crazy. It's crazy. So all fighters start out, the announcer announces the names of the fighter, and at this moment, and guys, what I really loved about this thing is that the announcer announces Royce Gracie winning $110,000 after 2 events. I love that he actually brought that moment up, because I forgot to mention he won $50,000 in UFC 1 and $60,000 in the second one. And UFC 3 is also filled with $60,000 as well. Keep that in mind. Oh yeah, and by the way, guys, they also heard reports at the time. I don't know if this was before or after the fight. Someone said that Keith Hackney was out of the tournament. But yeah, again, it's been a while since I saw the footage. But as right now, Felix Mitchell, the guy that was actually a replacement, would take over to fight Ken Shamrock. He's a Kung Fu fighter. We'll get to that fight later. So the fight starts out. They both study each other, and they come out of nowhere. They're holding on to each other, and Royce, after 7 seconds, just runs straight. He grabs him and just charges straight to the back of Chemo, slams the friggin' cage wall, and thank God there's no cage door there, or else both of them would have led out of the ring again, but we'll get to that moment later, or maybe not later, because why not later? Because as Chemo grabs Royce Gracie's shirt, or part of his sleeve, and grabbing it, Royce pushes him straight to the cage wall again, only this time it's the cage door. He slams the cage door. Dude, the first time in history that someone ever, a fighter in UFC has ever got knocked out or got exit out of the octagon in the middle of a fight was Keith Hackney. The first time in history that's ever happened. This is the second time that the cage door has ever been broken. They just let him on, and the referee, they grabbed the fighter's back as quickly as possible and slammed the door, so they just continue with the fight after that. But they continue on, they throw each other this or that, and then after a minute, they finally get down, barely the ground, still holding. Like, Chemo is still on his back on the ground of the stage, and then he finally grabs and now takes a hold on him, and now he's on top of Gracie. And after 2 minutes, it was just turning into a wild... This fight was crazy, but Royce gets on top of him, and then Chemo gets on top of him, and then he's on his back, and... like, this fight was so amazing. And then we have Royce Gracie grabbing onto Chemo's head and his hair and punching. God almighty, what are you doing? This fight was so damn good. I just can't believe how they just... it's so crazy. And then at this moment, they finally get back up after 4 minutes, and Chemo's holding on to him, grab, and then bam, slam. But then, Chemo made the mistake, thinking he did. Royce picks up his legs, this or that, grabs him on, and gets his arm caught on, and what a bummer, what a bummer. And Gracie just locks him on with the arm lock and taps out at 4 minutes and 40 seconds, and oh boy. And the crowd goes nuts, and then one of the fans, Royce Gracie's fighters, they hug him, and he's dangling out in the octagon trying to hug Gracie. Guys, these 4 fights in the quarterfinals of UFC are the greatest I've ever watched. I love every bit of this than I did. At this moment, the camera shows Chemo and his eye bleeding on. And then they show Royce Gracie exiting the ring, limping out, with his brothers carrying him back. Yeah. So something bad happened, which makes you wonder, is this the end of Royce Gracie's run as a champion? It is crazy. Guys, I don't know how Royce Gracie barely won this fight, and I don't think he's going to make it. But I will say, though, it was a great fight. It was a great fight. Best fight of the night. Like, I did love the Ken Shamrock fight and how that one started slow on. And then the sumo fight and Harold Howard and how those 2 fights became wild. This show is extreme. Period. Well. So now, guys, as I later heard, so this is what I did wrote down. So guys, I did wrote down, as it did said, after the fight ended with Chemo and Royce, they did said that Felix Mitchell is going to be replacing Keith Hackney in the tournament. And at this moment, guys, Royce Gracie is injured and he might not be in the semifinals. They might bring in Steve Jenham to take over in the semifinals. Maybe, but maybe not. Guys, there's not a lot of information I'll talk about of the semifinals, so I'm just going to get into it. Felix Mitchell, they talk about the promo package. They tell us this or that about who Felix Mitchell is. He's done a lot of interesting kung fu, but that doesn't matter, guys. And then Ken Shamrock enters in the ring wearing... So Ken Shamrock enters the ring in the first fight wearing red underwear. Now he's wearing yellow. Yeah. I think. Yeah. By the way, guys, Frank Mitchell, someone said that he was wearing gloves, but someone told him to take off his gloves because he was also a kickboxer? Question mark? So, guys, this fight... Guys, here we thought Ken Shamrock was up to the... Like, guys, Felix Mitchell is 28 years old. But, man, this fight... Guys, there's not a lot of information to talk about the semifinals. But this fight was dangerous. Ken is throwing him on. They throw him to a fence. He throws him this. They go around like a merry-go-round at one point. And then, after 30 seconds, Ken finally gets him to the cage and such. And Felix is grabbing onto the cage. Like, the first minute of the fight started out crazy. And then Ken tries to choke him out and choke the life out of him. Like, and then we get Felix throwing elbows at him while getting choked down, grabbed, and hold on the ground. It's like the first 2 minutes of the fight were going crazy. And then after the 2-minute mark, Felix turns around and now puts Ken Shamrock to the cage wall as well. And he rubs him on. And then, thinking that crazy stuff could happen, because at this moment, no one wants to go down. So at this moment, I'm looking at this, and after 3 minutes of the fight, I'm like, something crazy is going to happen. They're going to go for something crazy. And after grabbing underwear, pants, everything, after all the craziness, after 4 minutes of holding on to each other, not going down, and like I said before, they're grabbing underwear, their pants, it's like they're grabbing on like they're in a sumo fight. No one wants to take the fall. But then at 4 minutes and 10 seconds, we get a little bit of an amazing grab on Felix, and then he puts his back, twists his back out, and hits the ground, and Ken Shamrock's got him. And then we have him, Ken is on top of him, grabs him on, and out of craziness, he has Felix Mitchell on the hold, and he puts the rear naked chokehold on him, and at 4 minutes and 34 seconds, the fight's over. He taps out. And as Ken Shamrock gets up, now he's limping. What? Now he's limping too? What is going on? Like, guys, I love UFC 3, but at this moment, now we realize that Ken Shamrock has an ankle problem. Now, don't get me wrong, guys. Seeing Ken Shamrock and Royce Gracie winning their fights in over 4 minutes to under 5 minutes, and you have Keith Hackney winning a fight in under 2 minutes and Harold Howard winning in under a minute in his first fight, you think to yourself, dang, Ken Shamrock and Royce Gracie aren't the fighters that they were in. Like, guys, you viewers, like, guys, when you see all the information and such, and I just don't know what to say about this fight. This fight was pretty good. And then we realize the fighters are finally entering the ring. We realize that Royce Gracie, so they stated that Royce Gracie is gonna fight in the semifinals. But what makes this interesting is that the commentators tell us about what Harold Howard's strategy is and what this or that. And as they tell them about what Royce Gracie is going to do, this or that, and the commentators are talking about Harold Howard saying this or that, what is he going to do when he meets Royce Gracie, how to fight him. And they show us a early interview, and Harold says, we should point out that Mr. Gracie is a master of jiu-jitsu on ground. So me being a jiu-jitsu person, I can appreciate that more than the other competitors because I am a grappler also. I have, in the last few years, It's been creating a system of fighting that brings the karate aspect back into jiu-jitsu, which means that I'm working so that the person does not have to get the grapple you. So I'm looking forward to meeting Mr. Gracie on the mat, but I'm also looking forward to allowing myself to let my karate aspect of it to take over. So we'll see. And the best man will win, and that's all there is to it. So at this moment, guys, like pretty much, guys, you know what crazed me about that interview is that I was shocked that Harold Howard, guys, remember when I said that Harold Howard looked like he was a serial killer and this or that and how dangerous of a man he was? The way he was talking in the interview, he did not seem like a dangerous man. Crazy. So they enter back in the ring. Harold enters the ring first, and then Royce Gracie's entering the ring, and this time putting out his hands, and they're on the, like, guys, Royce Gracie is like one of the trains of the locomotives that have no application brakes, no official brakes, no old brakes, no air brakes, all the air brakes, all the stuff, all like the Royce Gracie's locomotive is dead. There's nothing. It's a dead train. It's not going to start. But the other locomotives that he's on in front and behind are walking forward, and he has his head down. Like, he's on the Gracie train, but he's walking so slowly that the locomotive is already dead. It's crazy. So, yeah, Gracie is 27 years old, which I keep forgetting because that's crazy how Kimo Leopoldo is 26. Crazy. So it's crazy. They announced the fighter of mostly... So, guys, this is what we get. The announcer announces Harold Howard, and then Royce Gracie thinks about something, and then he turns his back around. He lays on the covered foam of the top part of the octagon, where the covered foam is, of the top part, and he's just putting his hands like this or that, just hanging on. The announcer announces Royce Gracie, and at this moment, and then suddenly John McCarthy's talking to the trainers, talking to them, this or that, and then one of the Gracies throws the towel, and as he throws the towel, the fans hated it. So, hear me out, guys. So, guys, due to the fatigue of sustained injuries during the first fight, Gracie was unable to continue the tournament, but because they threw the towel, Harold Howard was given a bye into the finals. So this fight never happened, so Gracie's still undefeated, 8-0, and Harold Howard is still 1-0. So no one won. This fight never happened. So, yeah, they knew that Royce was hurt. It was a smart idea. And then as Harold walks out of the ring to do his stuff, upset that he didn't get to fight Gracie, but you can't blame him. For some reason, the camera cuts to another guy with red bathrobes. He turns around and he looks at the camera, and he's just going crazy, just telling... I couldn't hear a dang word he was saying to the camera, and then the camera cuts to Kimo Leopoldo and his trainer running into the ring, and there's everybody, yeah, we're the winner, yeah! And John McCarthy, the referee's trying to grab out Kimo Leopoldo, saying, hey, get your ass out of the ring, you're out of the finals, you idiot! And Kimo's trainers just said, yeah, we won the war! Yeah, you won the... What are you talking about? You didn't even won the battle. You might have won the war, but you lost the battle. You're not going to make it to the tournament. Jeez, it's crazy. And the referee, John McCarthy, tells Kimo's trainer, get your ass out of the ring, man. You have no... Like, it's hilarious. Like Kimo and Joe enter in the ring, and it's like... It was funny. Oh my gosh. Oh, man, oh my gosh. That's why. So guys, minutes later, we later realized, okay, so guys, minutes later, we now reported that Ken Shamrock has withdrawn due to his ankle injury. which means Harold Howard, that has only lasted 46 seconds in the first fight, got a bye in this round, so he's clean. So they bring in a ninjutsu fighter that's only a third-degree black belt ninjutsu in his career, is Steve Jenham, a former armed police officer from Omaha, Nebraska, which means we are going to see a new champion. So here's the thing, guys. They come out, they tell us what happened to Ken Shamrock, they show us replays of what happened to his injuries, and then they show injuries about Royce Gracie. And then they give us package promo to Steve Jenham talking about being an officer, and it just shows us information, but who cares about him? I love that Steve Jenham says, my name's this, I'm from Omaha, Nebraska, I'm going to bust the UFC. He doesn't even know if he was going to be in the tournament, because who knows who was going to get injured. He just got lucky. So it's kind of hilarious because he enters the ring with a bunch of guys with yellow shirts on, almost like they're it's almost like, when I actually saw this for the first time, I was like, dude, why are they wearing yellow shirts? What is this, SpongeBob SquarePants fan club right now? Why is everyone wearing yellow shirts? And it's funny because Steve Jenham comes out with black shorts, and he's not even, well, I didn't mean to, well, mostly colored, not black shorts. He's not even wearing a yellow shirt, so what the heck? And then they show us a package promos. Well, yet again, they don't know much about that. I'm not going to get into it. Guys, I actually love that every time Harold Howard enters the ring, they hold up the Canadian flag. This time when they enter in the ring, I love that when they enter in the ring, the guy in the front of the locomotive puts out the Canadian flag. He walks in, he turns around saying, oh crap, I actually led too early. I got to back up a little bit and wait for the train to move faster. So he backs up a little bit with tippy toes, and then when someone touches back, he just walks on. So that was a funny moment, the guy holding the Canadian flag. If you guys didn't see the entrance of Harold Howard entering the ring during the Steve Jenham fight, you'll be surprised. So, yes, he enters the ring. He's 1-0. And then the announcer, like, at this moment, guys, this is history in the making. So, guys, hear me out. So, guys, Steve Jenham is in his debut. This is his first fight in UFC. Debut. He's from America. Harold Howard, 1-0 from Canada, which means we're going to see history repeat. So, only a Brazilian fighter has ever became champion UFC. Not an American and not in Canada. And not one fighter in UFC has ever won a championship in their debut in UFC. Which means if Steve Jenham wins, not only he's the first American to become a champion in UFC, he's also the first to do it in his debut. But if Harold Howard wins, he'll be the first Canadian championship in UFC history. We're seeing two interesting sides here. It's amazing history, and it makes my nose itch. And guys, when this fight started, some of the fans were like, oh man, this isn't what we were thinking of. We were like, guys, I feel bad because guys, the poster at the time, the poster of the UFC American Dream showed Royce Gracie and Ken Shamrock holding each other and just looking at each other eye to eye in the poster at the time. I don't think fans were expecting this, but yet again, where people were expecting Royce Gracie and Ken Shamrock to get injured in this, it just goes to show you how dangerous it was. Yeah, competition was a lot more dangerous than it was in the first two UFC shows. But man, oh man. Guys, this final match did not disappoint any of the fans. So guys, the fight starts out. Harold is just bouncing around, scaring off Steve Jenham, a really guy that's not that big. And as he starts off without his left foot. He's leading with his left foot, just to let you know. And there's time that Harold Howard leads off. He tries to almost thinking about kicking Steve with his right. Then he switches to leading his left foot. And as he does that, he does this wild, crazy thing. Like, he jumps. He did this crazy, wild thing. The first time I saw it, I was like, what the heck was that? Harold Howard, this mass serial killer person I was thinking of, did this scissors flip kick. What the frig? And it's hilarious because on Wikipedia it said Howard is also well known for once executing a scissor flip kick during the battle with Steve. Dude, guys, when I first saw that, it was a little bit of a sloppy scissors kick flip because he leans on, like he leads off with his left foot and then he picks up his right and his back right leg and then just flips himself. But it wasn't even close. Like Steve Jenna managed to back up by a full 2 feet. It wasn't even close from the kick from Harold kicking Steve. Harold gets back up. The crowd goes, woo, amazing. And the commentator goes, oh, well, a little bit of acrobatics, which had to be the only thing I ever heard in commentary. And then we get right hand, and then suddenly Harold goes for it. They go punch. This time, Steve is trying to bring down Harold Howard, throws punches. Just to let you viewers know, these two don't know much about their differences because at the end of the day, guys, Harold Howard was prepared to fight Royce Gracie and the other dangerous fighters. Steve Jenham wasn't preparing to take on any other fighters. So when you see both of their competition of Harold versus Steve, they don't know what their strategies are. Just keep that in mind. So, but because they're fighting for $60,000, they got to go for it. So Steve manages to put Harold to the cage, and then boom, they both get takedown. Sorry for that. I love opening the cabinet on my kitchen door here. So he goes down. Steve is on top of him, and then he gets headlocked, and then Steve tries to get back. He flips on, and now they both try to get up. But instead, Steve is trying to get back up, and Harold is on his knees. So what does he do? Instead of trying to get back up before Steve does, he's throwing punches at Steve while he's on his knees. When I looked at that for the first time, I was thinking to myself, oh, that was a big error that Harold Howard did there. That was a big error he did. I don't know why he thought standing on his knees while throwing punches while Steve is trying to get back up while getting punched, getting back on his feet. I just didn't think it was a good strategy. And Steve managed to throw an amazing right punch and hurt him as well. And then the fight ends where he brings down Harold. And I was shocked that he brought down Harold. And as he does, he throws punch after punch. And the fight ended? What? The fight ended? This guy that looked like a serial killer of Marv from Home Alone with his crazy hairdo, which that's what I thought first when I first saw it, but he at 1 minute 27 seconds the fight ends by submissions and punches. Steve Jenham just won $60,000 in his debut of UFC. Guys, I don't know what to say about that. That really upset me when I saw that, but the crowd went nuts. For reasons how the spin kick thing and the scissor kick flip and him being on his knees were the biggest errors that Harold Howard did that night. And when you look at Steve, he got really smart not doing the dumb stuff that Harold did that night. But looking back at it, you got to be crazy to win. Yeah. So as they announce the winner, this or that, both of the two do shake hands and hug. So they do get the respect from the two of each other, and that was it. And then suddenly they show us an interview, and we're down outside the ring, and Harold goes when Ben Perry interviews Harold, telling him this or that. And Harold says, well, I told you if it worked, it worked. And it didn't. It didn't. And at the end, it didn't. I love you, children. I love your wife. And I, believe it or not, I love my family too. And then Ben tells him I'm a true champion, a super great fight, congratulations, and that was it. Guys, the first time hearing Harold Howard say that was almost like he was like a respected man. But we'll get to him in just a second. So they receive the $60,000. They award the winner to Steve Jenham. And then, of course, the announcer or the interviewer tells him, I don't know if it was Ben Perry, I think it was. He actually told him, saying, did you ever think you would even get into this fight tonight? Only for his comment saying, well, I was touch and go there for a little while. Something happened to Mr. Shamrock, and I got to go, and I was already there. And it was crazy because he did tell him how fresh he was, establishing himself, being a true champion. He came in and fought a good fight. Like, I will say, though, it was a good fight. It was crazy that they never told Steve what he was going to do with the money. Like, well, why not do it? They already told Gracie what he was going to do with the $110,000 in his 2 fights. Why not tell Steve? So they announced the winner. They have everyone being friends, and yeah, it was crazy. So they couldn't recap everything they saw. They don't want to recap it. And they also announced the next show will happen December, this or that. They say this. I'm Jim Brown, Ben Perry, Brian Kilmaid. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been UFC 3. Thanks for joining us. Till next time. And adios was the final word in commentary for Jim Brown as he finished it off. And that's the end of the show. So, guys, Harold Howard and Steve Jenham, consider they both started with a bang in UFC 3. It is sad that they ended with a whimper. And I don't want to get into Steve Jenham's career because we will get to Steve Jenham later in UFC 4, but not for long. But his career would not be that much successful in future times. But Harold Howard's career would come to an end because he would never come back until UFC 7. And, of course, another show called UVF 3 in 1996, ending in all losses. And it was bad. And, guys, hearing Harold Howard talking in interviews in the show almost seemed like he was a real respectable, nice guy. And he would even stay, it did state that he would stay married with 3 children until 2009 when he was doing a roofing job while still operating a small school with self-defense systems in Niagara Falls. So people really thought he was a really respected man, but information was really shocking because the stuff I did say was shocking when I heard that on December the 22nd, 2009, Howard was charged with 2 attempts of murder, accounts of assault with a weapon, an attempted break-in and entering with a failure to remain flight from police with dangerous operation of motor vehicle, mischievous, and 2 accounts of breach of reconnaissance. I'm sorry, I can't talk straight. After being captured by police. The events leading to the arrest, including attacking his sister and nephew with a hammer, attempting to force his way into his estranged wife's home, and finally crashing into a car in Falls View Casino. In the end, Harold was sentenced to just shy of 5 years in prison. Yeah, guys, to be honest, guys, I think what the moral of the story is, does that all have to do with the stuff that happened in the past of his loss against Steve Jenham? Does it all have to do with this or that? Guys, at the end of the day, we're human beings. We all make mistakes in life, and sometimes we have drug problems, and we do have problems with family life and around the house. And I can't argue about that. It is what it is, but it is what it is. So, yeah, guys, that's the end for UFC 3. Congratulations, Steve Jenham, first rookie in UFC history, and he might be the only rookie in UFC history to be champion. We'll be back in December the 16th, live in the Expo Square Pavilion in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Revenge of the Warriors, UFC 4 pay-per-view. And, man, oh, man, what are we just... oh boy, there's a lot of hilarious, interesting background history that I did not know about. We're going to see some new fighters, and we are going to see returning fighters, and man, oh man, this is going to be a great show to talk about. See you viewers next time, and with that being said, Mr. GLOAT Podcast is out. See ya.